How we doing, everybody? UFC Thoughts here, and today I'm going to be going over my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC Vegas 96, Cannonier vs. Borralho on August 24th, 2024. Let's get right into it with the first fight of 12. We start with Wang Cong versus Victoria Leonardo. I'm going to go with Wang Cong by first or second round TKO on this one. This fight's weird because Wang Kong's one of those fighters that's coming off the road to UFC where we don't actually know how good she is. For a prospect, she's pretty old, 32 years old, but then you look at her kickboxing record, which I couldn't really find, but all I saw was she has a win over Valentina Shevchenko. Now, I watched a bit of that fight, and I don't know if she should have won. But it was decently competitive for quite a few exchanges. My big problem with Victoria Leonardo is the amount of losses she has and the amount of times she's being finished in these losses. Because when you look at her losses, they're not bad. They're to very good fighters like a Miranda Maverick, an Erin Blanchfield, a Manon Fiora, Melissa Gatto, and Natalia Silva. But my big issue with this is like Erin Blanchfield's knocking you out with a head kick. I didn't even know Erin could throw a head kick, if I'm being honest. I don't think I've seen her throw. She's definitely thrown them, but to get fucking chinned by it when you're 6-1? Like Erin Blanchfield's, and you expect me to pick her against a decorated kickboxer? I don't think so. I think Victoria Leonardo's going to be slower. She usually is, because she's more on the not as fit side of women's flyweight. She could definitely cut a little bit more. And Wang Cong is pretty fit for the division. Let me check her photos again to make sure I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, she's in pretty decent shape. So I think that Wang Cong is just going to blast her out of there early. I think Wang Cong is going to work her legs. She's going to bait her in with the leg kicks, reach up high with a head kick, because that's another thing that Victoria Leonardo struggles with is head kicks. All of her finishes in the UFC, including the Erin Blanchfield one, kind of have a head kick involved, and I'm not a huge fan of it. So, Wang Cong, first or second round, KO. Lock it in. We move to Zygimantas Ramaska versus Nathan Fletcher. I'm going to go with Zygimantas in this one. First of all, there's going to be a discernible size advantage in favor of Ziggy. And Nathan Fletcher, you know, the differences between these two guys. Nathan, of course, lost to Kaan in his first fight. Ziggy beat Bexad in his fight. He had to get pulled from the competition instead of fighting Mairon Santos in the finale. I think the difference in this fight is just, again, I think size is going to play a heavy part in the end of this fight. Nathan Fletcher, he's more of a ground specialist. He's at that next-gen team in England with, you know, Paddy Pimblett and Luke Riley and those guys. He's got heavy ground skills. I don't know if he's going to be able to get Ziggy down, man. Ziggy's a big guy, and besides Nathan's jab on the feet, I think he's going to have a really big problem with Ziggy. And here's the thing, Ziggy, we did see in that Bexad fight, he took a lot of damage, had to get pulled, he had some facial injury, and he got cracked really bad by Bexad. But I don't know if Nathan's going to be able to crack him. Ziggy, if you want to see a textbook marauder, this is the guy. I don't even think the clinch is safe with a guy like Ziggy. He's constantly throwing knees. He's one of these European guys who served in the military, kind of like BSD, who, you know, has a fucking death glare on him. I think Ziggy he's gonna get chinned eventually. Do not get me wrong. It could happen in this fight. Who knows? It's a tough one. But I'm gonna side with Zygimantas Ramaska in this one. I just think that his pace and pressure is going to put a big hole in Nathan Fletcher, and I doubt that Nathan is going to be able to get a guy like Ziggy down, who also has some ground awareness himself, 4 wins by sub. You know, that doesn't and let me just say this, that doesn't automatically mean he has great ground awareness just because he has submission wins. Some of these guys just sub guys some cans in the regionals, and then, you know, but I think that Ziggy knows what he's doing. When he got rocked, he tried to lace up a calf slicer on Bexad to try and get up, and he worked his way back up. I think that Ziggy, he's just going to fucking he's going to burn a hole in the cardio of Nathan Fletcher. And this isn't no 2-round fight. So, you know, Nathan does have a chance if he's able to lock up some submission. We saw in the Paddy Pimblett Bobby Green fight that, you know, one mistake leads to the end of it. But I think that Zygimantas, I think even if he does make a mistake, I think it's going to be all right for him. And yeah, I just like the weapons that Ziggy, the knees up the middle, in the clinch. He throws a lot of teeps to the body, his leg kick isn't that great. It's very telegraphed, but it's effective. But yeah, I just think that this is going to be a rough one for Nathan Fletcher. I don't know if he's going to be able to TKO Nathan. I'll go with unanimous decision 29-28. I think Nathan might be able to do something early, but as the fight goes on, I think it's going to be a little bit more rough. We move to Jacqueline Cavalcanti versus Josiane Nunes. I'm going to go with Jacqueline Cavalcanti by unanimous decision. This is a tricky one, if I'm being honest. I'm going to go with Jacqueline just based on size advantage, and I do think that her style plays well against a girl like Josiane Nunes. Josiane, for some reason, has freakishly long arms and no neck, but I think that her over-swinging wild overhands isn't going to work against a girl like Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who is measured in her approach, very kick-heavy, throws a lot of leg kicks, throws teeps to the body. Her handwork isn't the best. The only reason I think this fight will be discernibly close is because it is in the Apex and it's going to be a smaller octagon, so Jacqueline can't, move around laterally as much as she wants to. But I do think that she still will outstrike Josiane Nunes. We still don't really know how great Jacqueline Cavalcanti is because the litmus test that they gave her in her debut was, of course, Zara Farron, who is not very good at all. Josiane Nunes does have more experience, but I don't think that really matters. But Josiane does fight. She's fought a lot of big women, which is wild because, she's 5'2", but fights at bantamweight. It's so nuts. I still think that Jacqueline will be able to outstrike her in moments and have bigger moments. Well, I'll say that I think Josiane will have big moments in this fight, but I think that they'll be far and few between the moments of Jacqueline just kind of throwing leg kicks, throwing teeps to the body, kind of just outpacing and outworking Josiane Nunes. So, I think our short queen, Josiane Nunes, won't be able to get this one done, sadly. But Jacqueline Cavalcanti she's just so big for the division. Josiane's so much smaller. And I don't think Josiane's going to be able to grapple, because that's not really her game plan, is to grapple. But, I'll go Jacqueline Cavalcanti, unanimous decision, 30-27, leg kicking, teeps to the body, to the death. I don't think this fight will be an insane watch, but I will watch it because I have nothing else in my life. We move to Viacheslav Borshchev versus James Yantop. I'm going to go with Viacheslav Borshchev. I'm not giving up on him yet. I'm not giving up on good old Viacheslav. James Yantop, I'm going to be honest with you, I can't even rewatch the Chris Padilla fight to remember how that fight fully played out. All I remember is Chris getting a sub and James not having too much success on the feet. This is going to be a stand-up fight. James Yantop does love to stand and brawl. That is kind of his thing. Standing with Viacheslav Borshchev for the longest time has been seen as a death sentence until, Nazim Sadikov rocked him. And Chase Hooper dropped them bad. Those are bad fights though. But when you rewatch the Nazim Sadikov fight, what a wild war. Is James Yantop as good as Chase Hooper? No. Is he as good as Nazim Sadikov? I don't think so. I think that James Yantop is he's still a little green, man. He still does make a lot of mistakes. And I will say this fight could just end with James absolutely nuking Viacheslav Borshchev. If I'm being honest with you guys, I would not bet on this fight. This is kind of a hard fight to predict because both of these guys kind of are a little iffy when it comes to certain things. Like James Yantop should probably win this, but who knows? Maybe Viacheslav has a killer performance because Viacheslav, for some reason, has shitty performances here and there, and then he'll put on an absolute war and arguable win over Nazim Sadikov, and then he gets fucking nuked against Chase Hooper. You know what I mean? I don't think James Yantop is going to go for takedowns against Viacheslav, because that's not really what he does. And I'm praying that Viacheslav isn't fully washed, and a very decorated kickboxer will be able to do somewhat well against James Yantop. And also, James Yantop doesn't throw insanely crude overhand rights. the way that Chase Hooper does, because Chase Hooper kind of Jake Paul'd it. He hooped it. See what I did there? He hooped it. He fucking verticaled it, rather, over the top. James Yontop's more of a straight punch right hand kind of guy. And I don't know if that's going to fully be effective on a guy like Viacheslav. If I'm being honest, I'm just picking Viacheslav because I want him to win. Keeping it $150. This is one of the only fights I'm really doing that with. so yeah, fucking deal with it, dude. But yeah, I think Viacheslav might be able to put on a striking masterclass. But who fucking knows at this point with him? Because he used to be a guy who's like, dude, no one's beating him in the stand-up, man. And now he's getting fucking absolutely clobbered. But before the drop, he clocked Chase Hooper with a solid uppercut from what I remember. So, fucking watch the whole fight. Forget the 2 hematomas that he suffered. We move to Zachary Reese versus José Daniel Medeina. I'm going to go with Zachary Reese by finish. I think he'll be able to finish José Medeina. José Medeina is the worst signing in UFC history. He got his ass whooped like 30-27 by Magomed Gajiasulev on the Contender Series, and Dana White, for some reason, gave him a contract, but not Therese Finney. Come on, Dana. Give the man a contract. I'm joking. Therese Finney probably would get murked. But, yeah, I just think that Zachary Reese is better than José Medeina. José Medeina, he's kind of like a brawl, drunken bar fighter that you see in every hometown that you go to. The guy that just goes to the bar, gets shit-faced, and just throws hands for no reason. He fights like that guy. He makes a lot of mistakes, leaves a lot of openings, got his ass fucking completely handed to him by fucking Magomed Gajiasulev. His defense isn't really that great. He does swing wild, which might potentially help him against a guy like Zachary Reese, who does kind of leave his chin in the air. But I also like Zachary Reese's BJJ. He can go for subs off his back. We saw it on the Contender Series with his armbar over Eli, and he did lose to Cody Brundage by slam, but he was going for a submission attempt there. You know, he's got a couple of, his whole amateur thing was subs. He lost to Kevin Holland in 2012 by decision? What the fuck? Dude, he was 18 when that fight took place. Holy shit. Sorry, I got sidetracked, but that's nuts. That's actually kind of crazy. But yeah, Jose, I don't really think he's that good, man. I think this is going to be a rude awakening for Dana White for giving out contracts on the Contender Series to anybody he wants. He fought at light heavyweight on the Contender Series, so he's probably going to cut more weight. Did he take that fight on short notice? I almost think that he did, because he's a middleweight. Is he middleweight for most of his career? Other than that fight? No, he moved up to light heavyweight for a little bit. But yeah, his only finished loss is by submission, so I just think that if the fight does get to the ground, I do favor Zachary Reese a shit ton. So, yeah. Zachary Reese finish in the first 2 rounds. I'll even say the first. So yeah, Zachary Reese, big up the boy. We move to the featured prelim, Denis Buzukja versus Francis Marshall. I'm going to go with Denis Buzukja in this one. Francis Marshall took this fight relatively short notice. I'm pretty sure he took it 3 days ago, or something like that. So he's going to have a shitty training camp, or lack thereof, rather. Denis Buzukja, both of these guys hold wins over Connor Matthews. Denis Buzukja's win, of course, is a little bit better because he got the finish. And I think that's going to be something that leads me to pick him in this fight, because Francis Marshall is kind of a grappler first. He does hold his own on the feet somewhat, but he is primarily a wrestler at the end of the day. He does like most of his success flowing through his offensive wrestling skills. And Denis Buzukja is one of these guys that a lot of people forget trains at Longo and Weidman with, Aljo, Matt Serra, Charlie Campbell, Matt Frivola, all of these guys, these New Yorkers, these, you gotta fucking go, Aljo! That, you gotta fucking go, Aljo! Go, Buzukja! And Dennis, he's coming off his first ever career win, but UFC win over Connor Matthews with a finish. He looked pretty solid on the feet as well. Defended 2 takedowns. Francis Marshall, coming off a shitty training camp, hasn't fought in over a year. Definitely is going to have ring rust. is mostly a grappler. I like Dennis's cardio. He had his only losses in the UFC are to Jamal Emmers, who, has a win over Corey Sandhagen, and fucking Sean Woodson, who literally everybody is losing to besides fucking Julian Erosa for some reason. And fucking Luis Candela, I think. What's that dude's name with fucking a missing finger? What's his name? I'm going to look it up right now. Luis Saldana, that's what it was. I didn't even have to look it up, but I remembered it right before. But yeah, I think Dennis on the feet is going to look sharp. Francis Marshall's mostly 1s and 2s. I like Dennis Buzukja's striking. He's kind of a dog in there, with fucking, you gotta go, in his corner, you just got it. You gotta go, dude. And I think that Dennis Buzukja is going to be able to go against a guy like Francis Marshall, who we did see get demolished by Isaac Dolgarian. So, yeah, I just think Dennis, with a full training camp, he's going to be able to push a pace against Francis Marshall, try and gas him out. But, yeah, that's about it. We move to the start of the main card. Edmen Shahbazyan versus Gerald Meerschaert. I'll go with Edmen. This is kind of a tricky fight. It really depends on whether or not you believe that Gerald is going to be able to impose his will with the grappling and cardio over a guy like Edmen. And personally, I don't know. I think Gerald is one of those guys that Edmen can kind of go through. Because I don't know if Gerald poses as much of a stand-up threat as a guy like AJ Dobson. Or the only reason why I picked AJ Dobson, by the way, when they fought was because AJ is strikingly fast, surprisingly quick on the feet, and Gerald Meerschaert is not. He's kind of a ploddy plodster, slow and lumbering, kind of just throws shots out there to see if, like throwing shit at a wall to see if it sticks. But of course, if it gets to the ground, it's very interesting because Gerald can scramble up some eggs at middleweight and, make things happen. But I think with the smaller cage, it will favor Gerald, but I do think that Edmen may be able to get his kicking game going against a guy like Gerald. He is kind of in his recovery arc as of recent because, of course, he went through those 3 brutal fights against Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, and Nasruddin Imavov. But, in his last 3 performances, even including the, Anthony Hernandez performance, there has been some stuff there. You know what I mean? He's had some moments. Like, he had a very solid first round against a guy like Anthony Hernandez, which I know I've said that I think he is overrated. Anthony Hernandez is good. He is a good fighter. But for some reason, I just don't like him. I don't know if you guys have fighters like that, where you just don't like him for some reason. Anthony Hernandez is that guy for me. I don't know why. I don't know why he's like that. But, AJ Dobson, he knocked out AJ. He did get hurt in that fight, if I remember. But then also, Dolce Lugambola, he fucking shredded him. I just think that Gerald Meerschaert is kind of a textbook guy that gets beat by Edmen Shahbazyan. Kind of my reasoning for when I picked Derek Lewis against Rodrigo Nascimento. Kind of just like, this guy seems like a dude that would get... There's no real reasoning behind it. Edmen is going to be quicker than Gerald Meerschaert by a shit ton. I think Edmen's takedown defense has looked decent against a guy like Anthony Hernandez in the first round. I think Edmen can control a pace in this fight. Gerald doesn't push a crazy pace, unless he's fighting a guy like Brian Barberena, who is just fat. Edmen isn't fat. He's going to be able to fight back, other than fucking Brian Barberena. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a bit interesting on the feet. If it does get to the ground, Gerald will have his brightest moments, but on the feet, I do think Edmen can piece him up a little bit. I'll say first round TKO. I'll go with body. I think Edmen would land a solid body shot, whether it be a body kick or just a rip to the liver. And I think that Gerald will crumble. But, yeah, it is kind of a tricky fight, though. We move to Neil Magny versus Michael Morales. One of the better fights on the card, if I'm being honest. I'm going to go with Michael Morales. I don't know if he'll be able to KO Neil Magny, because Neil Magny is pretty tough. And Michael Morales hasn't showed the most finishing potential as of recent. I know he did KO Trevin Giles and Adam Fuggett, but he did have a decently not competitive fight with Max Griffin, but Max Griffin was able to take the damage. Same with Jake Matthews. I just think that Neil Magny is going to be way too slow for Michael Morales. And in this case, this is one of the first times in a while that we're seeing a guy fight Neil Magny with a almost equal reach. I think the last time was Philip Rowe, but Philip Rowe, for some reason in that fight, went for a clinch fighting style with Neil Magny. Michael Morales ain't no clinch guy. He's going to be winging ones and twos from in the center of the cage, and even if it does get to a clinch exchange, Neil Magny has no way in hell of getting a guy like Michael Morales down, who, has a, 92% takedown defense? This dude's a fucking monster, alright? I do think that he is going to beat Neil Magny. I do not believe he'll be able to finish a guy like Neil Magny, because Neil Magny is tough, don't get me wrong. Or maybe he does. Maybe he is the, would that be the second time that someone knocked out Neil Magny since fucking Santiago Ponzinibbio did it? I still can't believe Santiago fucking shut him out. That would be, someone else did it. In the first round. Who fucking knocked him out in the first? It was Lorenz Larkin. That's a tough one. Yeah, that's a tough guy. That's a pretty bad one. Not a bad loss, but that's a bad dude. Yeah, Michael Morales, I just think that he's going to be way quicker than Neil Magny on the feet. He'll mix it up better. Neil Magny will throw his geriatric leg kicks for some reason, thinking that they'll work. He'll throw out of range, even though he has 80-inch arms. And not 80-inch arms, but 80-inch reach. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see a way Neil Magny wins in this scenario. I don't think Michael Morales is a Mike Malott where he has glaring weaknesses. And even then, Mike Malott was beating the piss out of Neil Magny for 14 minutes of their fight. Michael Morales has a good gas tank. He doesn't gas out. He keeps a moderate pace. So I don't think Neil Magny is going to turn on the barn burners for this one. I don't think he's going to go at an insane pace. It'll be a Neil Magny fight. It'll be exchange for exchange, and I think Michael Morales is going to have the better exchanges in this fight. So, yeah, Neil Magny's also 37. Not the greatest. I think Michael Morales is another addition to the new guard of welterweight. One of the reasons I ranked the division so high is because a guy like Michael Morales is outside the rankings, 25 years old, 4-0 in the UFC, finally getting his chance to breach into that top 15. I think he'll get it done. So, good shit. We move to the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 featherweight finale. Kaan Ofli versus Mairon Santos. This is a very tricky fight. I'll go with Mairon Santos. I think that it's so fucking... Kaan is very good. I'll say this about the newest season. I didn't really care that much about the drama going on in the house. I didn't really watch it for that. I watched it for the fighters. The fighters on this season of the show were very fucking good. Kaan and Mairon are both examples of that. Both of them they're very good fighters. Kaan, very grapple-based. Got a crazy... He reminds me of a smaller Volkanovski, if that makes any sense. 64-inch reach doesn't help him at all. The reason why I'm going with Mairon, I like Myron's sprawl. I like his hips. I think his takedown defense is pretty solid for a guy of his stature. He's got a weird body, very long legs, kind of smaller torso, but very powerful with his hips. And I think that Myron's striking is going to be a little bit too much for Kaan. I can see a world where Kaan wins this fight. This is a very tricky fight to predict. It really just depends on if you think that Kaan's able to get the finish on the ground or not. Because Mairon has been finished on the ground. We've seen him struggle on the ground, even on the show against Edwin Cooper. But against Guillermo Torres, Mairon showed beautiful takedown defense and what happens when you can't get the takedown on him. I think Kaan, he's very short, very muscly. I think he's going to struggle a little bit. Mairon isn't a Nathan Fletcher, He's also got jiu-jitsu of his own. He's from Brazil. He's got that. And also, Myron's very defensively sound. He checks a bunch of leg kicks. He doesn't leave his chin too much in the air. Kaan's very reserved as well, but I think Mairon Santos will have quite a few big moments in this fight that'll catapult him to victory. I think Mairon will win a unanimous decision or split decision 29-28. I think this fight will be relatively close, but I think that people will favor Myron's striking over the success Kaan may or may not have in the grappling. Because if Kaan does have success in the grappling, it most likely will lean his way. But I think Mairon will defend a number of takedowns, because Kaan does at times entertain the stand-up for a little bit. Like against Nathan Fletcher, he entertained the stand-up for about 2 minutes or so before he finally shot in. Kaan has to pressure his opponent, and Mairon Santos is kind of a guy who likes to pressure his opponent. It'll be a pressure cooker matchup. I think in the center of the cage, it'll be difficult because Kaan does succeed more against the fence rather with his takedown attempts. So, yeah, I think Mairon Santos will have a number of success. Same with Kaan Ofli. It's going to be a very tricky fight, and either guy will win. Either way, both of these guys are going to be really tough to deal with in that featherweight division for any unranked guy, and I'm excited to see both of these guys flourish. We move to the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 middleweight finale, Robert Valentin versus Ryan Loder. I'm going to go with Robert Valentin in this one. Both of the finales are very tricky fights to pick for. Ryan Loder, very good American wrestler. He fights like an all-American wrestler, but he's honestly got some decent striking chops on him too. He's able to wing a head kick if he wants to. His 1s and 2s are decent. He does well in the clinch. But there's just this aura about Robert Valentin. I don't know what it is. This dude, he's got the fucking runes tattooed on his fucking chest. He fucking finishes. He's got brilliant jiu-jitsu. He looks like a fucking Viking. You know what I mean? He strikes me as a guy who just finishes every fight. And he's got a fucking solid finish rate, I'll tell you that much. I like Robert. He fucking goes for it every time, man. Very wild on the feet, which Ryan can take advantage of, don't get me wrong. Robert's a very fucking high-risk, high-reward kind of fighter. I mean, he leaves his chin up in the air a lot of the times. He got clipped in his last fight for it, but he hits very hard. He has brilliant jiu-jitsu. A lot of people don't recognize that. People think of him as just a finisher on the feet. Most of his wins come via finish. And in in his fight to get to the finale, he got a submission. I don't even know what the fuck it was, to be honest with you. I've been watching MMA for a while. He got like a Kimura with his legs. I've never seen anything like it. It was fucking nuts. I think Ryan Loder is going to be a bit strong in this fight, but I wonder how this fight's going to go at a Robert pace instead of a Ryan pace. If Ryan takes advantage of this fight and goes at his pace and is able to take down Robert at all times, land a bunch of damage on the ground, he will win. But I wonder if Robert's able to rock him just once and swing the pendulum just a little bit to set it at his pace where he's walking down Ryan. It's going to be very fucking interesting, I'll tell you that much. I think Ryan will have success early, but I think as the fight goes on, Robert is just going to be able to chip away a little bit more every single time. And I think this is a guy, I think these are two fighters that middleweight needs. An insane all-American wrestler like Ryan Loder, and a dynamic finisher from Switzerland, and Robert Valentin, who is kind of a fucking Viking. I think Robert might be able to finish Ryan in the first or second round, but even if it goes to decision, I think on damage, Robert's going to be doing a shit ton of damage. Even though Ryan does do damage on the ground, he isn't like a wet blanket kind of guy. He does search for ground and pound. I don't know. I just think that Robert Valentin is he's a guy to deal with in the cage. And I think that Ryan's going to have a bit of trouble with him, but it's a very tricky fight to predict. Both of these guys are great. We move to the co-main event, Angela Hill versus Tabatha Ricci. I'm going to go with Angela Hill on this one. Tabatha Ricci hasn't really impressed me in her last couple of fights. In fact, her Tisha Pennington performance really put me off of her. She had a really not insane performance against her that I would have liked her to have. And Angela Hill, honestly, as of recent, looked pretty fucking solid against like Luana Pinheiro, Denise Gomes. You know, her Mackenzie Dern performance wasn't really the greatest, but then she also has beat girls like Lupi Godinez. You know, the only people that are beating her as of recent have been fucking Mackenzie Dern, Verna Jandiroba, Amanda Lemos, and she arguably fucking beat Amanda Lemos. You know what I mean? I think that Angela Hill is going to be better on the feet. Tabatha Ricci's striking is very bread and butter. I think that she's just a bread and butter kind of fighter. I don't see Tabatha Ricci really controlling a girl like Angela Hill. I've doubted Angela Hill in her past couple of fights. In fact, I picked against her the last 2 times. I don't think I'm going to do that again. I don't really rate Tabatha Ricci that much. Maybe this is the time that Tabatha Ricci shows out, shows a great performance, but she just hasn't shown a performance where I'm like, that's a contender that I like. You know what I mean? She just lost to Lupe Godinez. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Angela Hill. I'll go by decision. I think she'll be able to outpoint Tabatha Ricci across this fight pretty easily, if I'm being honest. Tabatha Ricci's going to be shorter. She's going to have the reach disadvantage. The only thing that she's going to have on her side is youth. But even then, all the ladies that Angela Hill is fighting now are fucking younger than her. I mean, Lupe Godinez, Denise Gomes, Luana Pinheiro, these are all younger fighters. And Angela Hill is dusting them, and she's showing massive improvements in her ground game. I just don't see Tabatha Ricci being the one to do it. So I'll go Angela Hill, unanimous decision, 30-27. Lock it in. We move to the main event, Jared Cannonier versus Caio Borralho. I'm going to go with Caio on this one. I like the youth. Many of the reasons why I picked Nasruddin against Jared Cannonier are still in place. Jared, not even over a year ago, suffered a knee injury. He's turning around really early after that TKO stoppage. I know it was very early, blah, blah, blah. I was literally there in person. I don't care. Still got very wobbled. Was on his way to being out of there if you rewatch it, in my opinion. And Caio, what do we know about the fighting nerds, guys? They have plot armor. There's no way he loses. I'm joking. I do like Caio in this matchup. He's a southpaw, which we've seen given fits to Jared Cannonier in that first round against Marvin Vettori. He just, kind of got clipped a couple of times against Marvin Vettori. I don't like that. I don't like when you're getting almost knocked down by Marvin Vettori. That's not a good sign. And Caio, he's kind of a strong dude. And he's the top tier of the guys in the fighting nerds as of right now. He's kind of their ringleader right now. He's kind of the group leader in that fucking little tangible group. And I think that his grappling, mixing in the takedowns against a guy like Jared Cannonier, is going to work very well, because Jared in that last fight against Nasruddin, he kind of seemed to slow down a little bit. And Caio Borralho, however you fucking pronounce it. There's going to be 50 different pronunciations come Saturday night. Who cares? I'll stick with Borralho. But, we've seen him. He has a decent gas tank. This is his first time going 5 rounds in the UFC, at least from what I can see. I don't see any 5 rounds. Oh, he did go 5 rounds in the regionals. Good to know. And he won by decision against a 10-4 guy. Okay. But yeah, I just think that Jared's older. Besides the Marvin Vettori performance, he hasn't looked insanely great. I mean, Derek Brunson was giving this guy fits on the feet in certain moments of their fight. From what I remember, Derek knocked him down. Jared's chin has always been kind of suspect. Caio Borralho, he is coming off the Paul Craig performance, which is not really the best litmus test that we would like to see from a guy going into a fight with Jared Cannonier, because Paul Craig isn't the greatest, if we're being honest, and Caio kind of showed that in that fight. But I will favor the young, hungry contender in Caio Borralho against the older, war-torn veteran in Jared Cannonier, who we have seen get dropped before, who we have seen have struggles against southpaws. And Caio is training with those fighting nerds dudes, Carlos Prates, Mauricio Ruffi, Joan Silva. These guys are all fucking killers and monsters. And I think Caio Borralho, he doesn't even really mix in the grappling as much anymore. But when he does get to the ground, he is very dangerous. And Jared is strong, don't get me wrong, very strong for the middleweight division. But I do think Caio Borralho technically is just better than Jared Cannonier, even on the feet. Jared does leave openings, as we have seen against Nasruddin Imavov, of course, and some of his other fights, Vettori, for example. I just do think that Caio Borralho is going to be better than Jared Cannonier, sadly. I do love Jared. He is one of my favorite middleweights. I love seeing the old man win, but I just don't see him beating a guy like Caio, who is hungry, who is younger, who is kind of just improving with every performance that we're seeing of this guy. Caio legit made a dude quit in their fight. The guy gave up. And, he's going into grappling matches against a guy like fucking Jailton Almeida. And he's going to a decision with that guy. You know what I mean? He's taking down controlling Armen Petrosian. He's beating Mahmoud Muradov. He choked out Mikhail Alexeychuk. He beat the piss out of Abus Magomedov, besides dropping the first round. And Abus has great defensive grappling. He does. That's the only reason why he did well in that fight. And Caio kind of had to shake the cobwebs off. He's got 5 rounds to do that against a guy like Gerard Cannonier, even if he does have first round jitters. So I'll go with Caio. I think he'll beat Jared by decision. I'll go 49-46, because I do think Caio does have first round jitters whenever he fights usually. I don't know if Jared's going to be able to expose that, though. So, yeah. I'm UFC Thoughts. These have been my picks and breakdown for every fight on UFC Vegas 96, Cannonier vs. Borralho on August 24th, 2024. My confident picks reside with Zachary, Reese, Michael Morales, and in the main event, Caio Borralho. My pre-card rating is a 5 out of 10. Not the greatest card, but there are some fights that I'm looking forward to. I am looking forward to the tough finales, and also the other tough fight they have on there with Zygimantas Ramaska versus Nathan Fletcher. We have some up-and-coming contenders like Wang, Cong, Zachary, Reese, Dennis Buzukja. And then we got some other fights like an Edmen, Shahbazyan, Gerald, Meerschaert, which are going to be fun to watch out for. But the main event is really what's going to sell this card, I believe. I think Gerald Cannonier, Caio Borralho is a very interesting fight. Who are you guys picking? Do you guys disagree or agree with my picks? What would you guys rate this card? What are your guys' thoughts on the up-and-coming cards? Because, of course, we do take a week off. But, yeah, I'll see you guys in my recap. Peace.